our research really looked at how many children then, if birthright citizenship were revoked, what would happen in the future in terms of the numbers of children being born here without U.S. citizenship. Birthright citizenship is a right that was established shortly after the Civil War in the United States that said that anybody born on U.S. soil is a U.S. citizen. And that is something that is an American tradition and right, and it kind of makes the United States slightly unique in the world as being, a country that welcomes outsiders to become U.S. citizens. If the executive order is upheld by the Supreme Court next month, then we project that there would be 6.4 million children born in the United States in the next 25 years without U.S. citizenship. Now, not all of those kids would remain here, but even in our best case scenarios, projections, we expect there would be 3.4 million of those children still living here by 2050 who would not have citizenship. A lot of these children, if they had never actually lived in their parents' home country, they may have very little social connection to those places. They might have grandparents who live there, but it's not even certain that that's the case. They may not know the language of that country. And of course, they would not have friends or family necessarily there. And so it is very possible that sending them back to those places is not meaningful to them. It isn't like going home for them. It would be like leaving their home, if that makes sense. If the executive order were upheld, we would expect that most of the children born in the future without citizenship would be Latino. And so these would be people coming to the United States from Mexico, Central America, and South America for the most part. And they would have probably the largest long-run absolute impacts of this policy. But there was a surprising finding in that there would be, once we account for group size, that the group that would actually stand to increase the most in the number of people without citizenship would be Asians. And mostly people coming to our country from India and China. And this is the group of people who come here to work and study on these temporary visas. They tend to be highly educated. They tend to contribute a lot economically to the U.S. economy. And so by denying their children U.S. citizenship, we are creating a situation where their unauthorized population would grow substantially because of this policy. Immigrants are actually a net financial gain to the United States. As a whole, on average, they contribute more to the economy and in taxes than they take in public benefits. And economists from across the economic or the political spectrum have shown this to be the case. And this is especially true for high-skilled immigrants. Now, one of the groups that's going to be especially affected by this policy would be those on these temporary visas who tend to have higher levels of education. They tend to come to the United States to study. Our public education institutions invest heavily in their schooling, but for good reason, because there's a huge economic benefit for keeping them here. Our research shows that about half of those people who come here to study end up staying here permanently. Now, this new policy might change that, because if their children don't have U.S. citizenship, it's very likely that many more of them will actually return back to their countries of origin. And so, to some degree, we're squandering this historic advantage that we have across the globe by doing this.